What's going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Nick, joined by the man behind the controls, Mr. Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you this morning?
I'm getting better. That's about all I can say, right? I'm almost shook this thing, and uh, you know, I think I'll be fine. Hopefully by next week. But as we'll get into next week, it may not be an eventful weekend anyway. So who
Right.
knows?
Well, slowly but surely, I'm recovering from many of my travels. But fans, if you want to stay on top of all the latest indie wrestling news, you need to head on over to patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. That's where you're going to get a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Plus, we got some new shows that are coming your way, some new behind the scenes stuff. You can also go to YouTube at Tapped Out Pod. If you go to YouTube, you need to hit that subscribe button. You need to hit that like button. You need to hit that bell to get all the notifications. And of course, as always, you can listen to us on audio wherever you can find audio podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. Of course, that's my go-to. But we appreciate your support. And we just want you to stay on top of all the news because there is a lot of news. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, but we try to stay on top of it all. So let's head right on into this week's Indy Rewind. So not a this weekend and next weekend, not a whole lot going on. Georgia Championship Wrestling was down at the Got to Be Rolling Center. They've run a couple of shows there. Good crowd. This card was highlighted by a brother versus brother, Jerry Nelms versus Chris Nelms bull rope match. And I'm curious if they recorded this because that'd be one I want to take a look at.
If you're from the South, especially the Southeast, well, I know because you know what, Texas as well. I'd say so. Anywhere in the South, is there anything as fun as a good old fashioned bull rope match?
That's right. That's right.
Look, I
Um,
love, we go old school, brings back memories of Terry Funk, Dusty Rhodes, that era where they got the bull rope matches. And so I kind of like to see a good one of those every now and then.
yeah. Bull rope match, especially with two guys who kind of understand the who kind of understand the philosophy, the psychology behind a bull rope match. There was also some other great matches. One that kind of caught my eye is we talk about the Grapplers a lot and how they're tag team champions in so many places, but this past weekend, unrated took those GCW tag team titles in a triple threat match. So the Grapplers, we've kind of seen them lose some titles in different places, so they may be losing. I mean, they're consistently one of our top tag teams in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
but have the Grapplers lost a step this year?
Look, big stunning surprise. Two young kids, Trigger and Thorn. They unrated. They come in there, and that's an upset, by the way,
Yes.
by any stretch of the imagination. Because even the other team, you know, Scott Mason was involved in the other, in Stevie Ray. So I mean, look, it's not the only promotion, by the way. Lots of changes as far as in the last few weeks, and we probably will head down that road soon. Kind of recapping the champions again because there's some changes happening in the title scenes, but it's kind of cool to see a lot of a youth movement too, grabbing some of these titles, which is kind of cool.
Yes. We also saw, if you followed us last weekend, Anarchy Wrestling renamed their landmark heritage title to the Georgia Heritage title and said it could be defended anywhere in Georgia. And Jacob Ashworth did exactly that and defended that Georgia Heritage Championship against Alexander Lev. You talk about that youth movement. You talk about kind of like, and I don't consider. I think Jacob Ashworth's just been wrestling for a long time. I don't consider Jacob Ashworth to be old by any stretch of the imagination, but that is definitely that old school versus new school type match that we're
Yeah,
starting to see more and more of.
and it's styles, philosophies, personalities, all the above. Um, you know, it's funny. Jacob Ashworth is kind of like when you think of that Georgia Heritage, the landmark Heritage title. that's who you think of as Jacob Ashworth. Alexander Lev would be a total movement into the new era, a youth movement of that title. But unfortunately for Alexander Lev, he came up short this time, and the old veteran there held on, and he is still your Georgia Heritage Champion. So.
Yeah, so if you're down in that area, Georgia Championship Wrestling continues to build their audience, continues to build their promotions, a good mix of young talent and veteran talent all over that show. But kudos to them for a good weekend. Then you had a little bit of a different type show in Jefferson, Georgia, at the Jefferson Festival. Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. It was a festival show. Wasn't very long, but the crowd was good. It was super hot outside that day, but they put on the type of show that we've come to expect from Turnbuckle.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're gonna put out like obviously Vari Morales, the superstars, BGU. They're a lot of that. We talk about the youth movement. There's a lot of that at Turnbuckle that you're going to see. And like you said, I think one of their strengths is if you're going to give them a festival show, they're one of the best promotions to pick for that type of event because they're going to go out and it's going to be very fun. It's going to be for a casual fan who you don't have to worry about stories like, hey, did I miss? What do I need to know? Within the first couple minutes of a match, you're going to know who the baby faces are. You're going to know or let me phrase this because we're talking casual fans. They're going to know who the good guy is. They're going to know who the bad guy is, who we're supposed to cheer, who we're going to have to boo. And by the way, they clearly get behind, Vari Morales is like, dude, he's just easy to get behind.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's really, really cool. Apparently the superstars, look, we made a comment about them last week being cheered in Buford at Tannery Row at Disruptor. Apparently they're more likable than you want to give them credit for because when they get out there with the right, in the right environment, they are loved. So, which is good, by the way, which is kudos to those kids for being able to actually play, both directions, which is kind of cool.
Right. I think it says something about, we mentioned last week how hated Exotic Youth was, that it got the fans behind the superstars. I think it also says speaks to the popularity of Vari Morales, that they can be put with him, and and the crowd is, since they're already behind Vari, they're going to get behind that team. We're contractually, I don't know if we're contractually obligated to mention that Jack Jameson was on this show. He and Parker Lee.
And people liked him?
Well, no.
Yeah, no, he's over. So they gave headbands and sunglasses to the kids. So again, I think this is what we kind of were talking about. Look, in your typical environment, we can't stand the guy. Right? He's got a personality issue. Jack Jameson is just a total, anyway. But they get it in a festival environment, okay. So, and I don't even know, like, a lot of people in wrestling would like this. But like for me, it's a positive thing about the company to understand, listen, just go out there and have fun, entertain this crowd. We're not worried about storylines. We're not worried about any of this.
Right.
Like, just go entertain the crowd and send them home happy. That's what we're here for today, is just to entertain the crowd.
When I was a kid, there was a big deal made in the 80s that in the WWF, good guys did not wrestle good guys and bad guys did not wrestle bad guys. It was in the NWA, you would have the champion who, depending on what territory he was working that week, he could go. You wanted a champion that could go either way. If he was defending against a heel, he'd be a babyface, and vice versa. So it's very interesting to me. It's very compelling to me to see Turnbuckle saying, hey, these lines are a little bit blurred, and you're going to see matches that you're not going to see anywhere else, because we're going to put some of these people who wouldn't wrestle against each other anywhere else, but we're going to do that because again, the purpose, I would say there's two purposes behind Turnbuckle. Number one, raise money for the Dusty Foundation. Number two, experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can give a performer an experience and the opportunity to play different roles, have different style matches, that's invaluable. You cannot put a price tag on that.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Make sure you check out. I mean, Turnbuckle, they're running a lot, so you need to check them out on Facebook. They've got their schedule there. They're running all sorts of places, all sorts of shows, but entertainment guaranteed. Speaking of entertainment guaranteed, Coastal Empire also was down in Savannah Saturday night. A huge show. Um, and I'm just looking at the results here. You had in one of the matches of the night, you had the Flying Fro Michael Walker retaining that Coastal Chaos Championship against Rob Killjoy. And for a young wrestler like Michael Walker, the experience of being in the ring and Killjoy and getting a victory has got to be a big boost for his confidence.
I heard, listen, we're like I always tell you, like I wasn't there. I had multiple people message me
Mm.
and say this match was amazing. This match was outstanding. And it was literally underrated, underappreciated. We might want to like bookmark this. Rob Killjoy.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, look, I mean, I know at times we don't like to do it this way, but Michael Walker did his part. So I'm not taking anything away from Michael Walker here. I held his end of the bargain up. But when we talk about underappreciated, underrated, undervalued, whatever, Rob Killjoy could fall in this category.
Yes.
Rob Killjoy, not only, by the way, does he look spectacular in this match, but he also elevated Michael the Fro Walk, to another level as well. And, so I think at times we've heard, like, working a Rob Killjoy match is sometimes pretty complex, maybe is the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
And for Michael Walker to pull it, they did it. And for as much positive feedback as I got from this match, I think all the credit in the world has to go to those two for pulling it off. One for Rob Killjoy doing his part. And on the other hand, let's not, because I know, I think at times, and let me ask you this, because I want to ask you, we always hear like, oh, this guy made this guy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, I know what you're saying, and I'm not saying you're wrong. But the other guy did his part too, right? Like,
correct.
It didn't work just because Rob Killjoy was in there. Right? Michael the Fro Walker did his part as well.
Yeah, if Michael Walker lays an egg, then we're not having this conversation. Here's the thing with Killjoy: no one has ever accused Killjoy of mailing it in. He treats every match like it's the most important match of his career. Something I hugely respect. He doesn't. I've never known Rob Killjoy to not be full throttle. He doesn't. He doesn't know half speed. And when if you're a young wrestler and you see you're booked against Rob Killjoy, you are going to have to keep up. You are going to have to keep up with him.
And this is kind of where, yes, period on that one. I wanted to come in here. This is so. I wanted to make sure this is really pointed out about Coastal right now. Like in attempting to have a conversation about this show, like I read the package, I saw some video footage, some people sent me some video. The intertwined stories that Zach and Brian, whomever is behind the scenes doing this, we'll give them full credit. Coastal Empire is getting really good at tying the stories together.
Right.
So try to follow me here because this worked throughout the show. Dax Anthony defeated Cornelius Pepperbottom earlier in the show. By the way, clearly has an issue with Bryce Cannon and Exotic Youth, and there's some history going on there that's a problem. Why do I bring this up? Because, by the way, after the Rob Killjoy match versus Michael the Fro Walker, Dax Anthony gets involved because he wants involved in this Coastal, the Chaos title. Then you think, oh, well, Hakeem Young's going to come out and he's going to make a save. Well, then he turned, like he hits with a chair, and then so now there's a chair involved, and so now obviously Hakeem Young is shown. By the way, I wanted to point out, I made a comment in somebody's post. Zach Mosley, there was a video of footage of Hakeem Young after the show with, like they caught up with him with his cameras, and they, he had some words, and it was funny. I just wanted to put in there, and I'm like, I don't know why we're all surprised. Like, if the kid showed you who he was, and I'm not getting into that mess,
right?
If they show you who they are, believe them.
Right.
So don't be stunned that this thing with Hakeem Young played out the way it has. It's kind of on you for not believing otherwise. If you believed otherwise, that's kind of on you at this point. So now Rob Killjoy has a match at the next show, July 29th versus Hakeem Young. So that what I was trying to get at with all of this, you could see all of these things played together.
Yes.
It was one giant puzzle that fell together. And that, my friends, is where I like to tip my hat to wrestling promotions when it's not match. It's story that was weaved through the entire show. So kudos to those guys down there.
Yeah. I would say the top 3 matches on this show, we just mentioned Killjoy and Michael Walker. Then you had Zach Mosley and Suge D we've seen Zach Mosley have death matches. We've seen him do everything, but to have a classic technical wrestling match for Zach Mosley to get that win over Suge D, that's a huge thing. And then you had the main event, Randall Reno the third, I want to get that right, was able to retain the Coastal Empire Championship against Hollywood Hunter James. So in those 3 matches, you've got, again, Rob Killjoy pushing Walker to the limit. You've got Zach Mosley showing his wrestling chops. And then you got Hunter James trying to become the top guy in another company.
Yeah. And this one, again, this was another one that I said, like, dude, you got to check this match out when it's available on their, follow, Coastal Empire on their YouTube channel. All of this stuff will be up there for you to see pretty quickly. They're pretty good about getting their stuff up pretty quick. But dude, I have heard nothing but amazing things. And look, I'm not surprised. I mean, let's be honest with you. We're not stunned when we hear Hunter James had a good match. We don't have a ton of history with Randall Reno, but we'll see. But look, for them to go out there and tear the house down, like I said, and this wasn't like one person. I woke up. I will tell you, I woke up Sunday morning, and when I looked at my phone, it was like messages from people that were at Coastal, and it was like they couldn't put this stuff over enough, and look, they're going to be back July 29th. They're in Savannah at the VFW. I mean, check them out because I can't imagine, like, after this show, they're on tangent number 3, whatever we're at this part of the show. Coastal Empire, and I think this is a plus minus for what all of us try to do in covering wrestling, independent wrestling in general. Where were they a year ago on our radar?
They weren't.
And now we're telling, like, look, I've seen, like, trust me, I've seen some Coastal Empire. I've watched a pretty good bit of it, trying to catch up, and I can't put over the story that they were weaving through that whole show. Like, that's the kind of stuff that they went from being somebody that was like getting, again, guilty as charged. I'm not even like blaming anybody.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it, but now for them to be up there, that we're talking about them and the stuff that they're knocking out of the park. Oh, and by the way, they're doing it with a lot of young talents too that they're giving opportunities to.
Yes. They're not bringing in the super big names from outside of Georgia. They're using the local talent.
A matter of factly, I mean, look, they're the hierarchy, whatever they, Murder One, Joe Black, Warrior Tag, they vacated them now, so now and it's gone in a different direction, and all parties involved in that were kind of new faces, and so Probable Cause is your new champions. So again, it's new names in the mix. Like, that's what I'm saying. That's awesome,
right? And Randall Reno doesn't wrestle a ton of places in Georgia. So if you want to see him, you got to go to Savannah. And Coastal Empire is going to be back in Savannah July 29th. They're at the VFW. Tickets are on sale, and I may or may not be eyeballing that show or a future show, and making the trip down there to Savannah and trying to turn that into a workation. And get a little work done. Maybe
It's
do
the
a visit down
27th.
there.
It's the
Oh,
27th.
27th. Sorry
Yeah,
about
sorry.
that.
No, that's a me.
July.
That
That's
was a me problem.
July 27th. So I don't have the full calendar in front of us, but hey, if you're in that area, fans, go check them out.
I'm trying to wonder if that's a possibility of a last ditch trip for the summer, because I think my wife goes back to teaching that week.
Yes.
If I can get her, like the students come back the following week, I think she goes back before that week before, and if I can get her, talk her into like one last, you know what I mean? That would be probably pretty interesting to pull off.
Yes. Because school starts around here August 1st as well. So
Yep.
South ran yesterday, Sunday, June 30th. They were at their new home, New Realm Brewing in Atlanta. Interested to see. We're at Das Barbecue, and now they've moved to a new place. And I should have researched this of how far those two places are apart, and if their crowd is going to travel with them there.
I
And
did
then
read that they did have a good turnout, so that was super positive. So I'm glad, that was a good thing. I heard the crowd was good.
good. Uh, Also yesterday, Southern States Pro Wrestling continued their Savage 16. They're at the PCW Arena in Conyers. Seven. There were 8 matches scheduled. 7 matches happened, um, featuring the main event. Alexander Lev defeating Aaron Dallas. That's definitely a match of two young guys who, if they stay in the area, they're going to be fighting, jockeying for position
Mm-hmm.
for a long time.
And that one, of course, the Reverend Donald Jakes is involved. He's, there in Southern States. Let me ask you a question again. So, by the way, watch this on YouTube. They live streamed it. We're going to discuss
Yes.
that maybe here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I did catch it, so I made sure I watched it because I was like, hey, I can't get out there. I'm still kind of shaking this cold thing, flu, whatever, sign it, whatever I've got. So I watched it on YouTube. But I wanted to ask you this. This is kind of crazy. So Dr. Brock essentially walked away for a little while. He's going to take a break. And so I see Donald Jakes in Premier All-Star, Southern States. You're starting, he's at Coastal Empire. All these, and I asked myself, is the Reverend Donald Jakes kind of the new, top manager in Georgia? Because, ask yourself. It's a legitimate question, I think, because I started looking around. And I'm like, okay, who's the manager? Because I don't because here's the argument. Somebody was like, oh, well, what about Seabolt? And I'm like, okay, well, he wrestles too, so he's not really the manager,
Right.
I don't know. That's a very good question. I mean, it's Tristan Michaels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like
Are there? Let's just throw out some names: Tristan Michaels, Donald Jakes, Matt Hankins, if he's coming back to Anarchy, but that's really kind of the only place he is. See if you threw Seabold in there, I mean, there's only a handful.
Look, I'm not disrespect. Literally, we did this off the fly, so I'm not even really thinking, but it was in my head. I was trying to think about that, and I'm like, because somebody. So I had to, okay, well, is Kitchens is he the manager of the of the hierarchy? And maybe, it doesn't look like when you go to Viral. Hancock looks like that's on shaky ground. So right. As far as his allegiance with the group, yeah, I mean, literally, Todd Sexton and Southern Honor, the end game, okay, but that's kind of again, that's one play, when we're talking about on a statewide level, like, is it essentially, is it Tristan and Donald Jakes at this point that are wrestling it, or not, that are managing in multiple places? And I know, again, folks, I know there's others, but I'm thinking on a bigger scale across Georgia.
Right, right. I don't know. And does Tristan manage anyone? I know he's with Hunter James. Is he with anybody else?
It's good. I mean, that's, and listen, this is a discussion piece. This isn't an argument. This isn't a debate
No,
piece.
right.
Tappedoutpod@gmail.com, at tappedoutpod. Obviously, you can comment in the video. Like, we're literally striking the conversation of, like, is that who it is? Is that the measure? Is that who's, like, the front runners? If you're talking about who's the best manager in Georgia right now, like, who is it?
I couldn't even tell you who won that award last year. Who won Manager of the Year? I can't even think of that off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's a
Couple weeks.
I don't know.
That's a very very good point. And I think that manager's not the only place that's happening. Is there are openings, if you know what I mean. There are openings for people to step up and really make their mark in Georgia wrestling if they'll step up and do it.
Yeah.
And take a chance. So that was this week's Indy Rewind. Upcoming, let's look at making the drives. As I mentioned before, it's a slow weekend. It's the 4th of July. There's no squared circle action wrestling at the Royston Dome Friday night. Saturday, there are 2 shows we know about. Turnbuckle is going to be in Athens at the Southern Brewing Company, and we've seen them there, multiple times. And you never
Well,
know
hold
who's going
on.
to show up there.
That's actually, I want to pause,
Yeah.
not to be contrarian, but technically that's not true.
No, that's right. As you said that, I'm like, nope, that's right. This is something
Yeah.
new, something different.
Yeah, wrestling at Southern, that's kind of their home. But Turnbuckle, kind of one of their first shows there. So it's a different twist.
And you never know with their connections who's going to show up for a show like that. You do know it's going to be entertaining. You're going to see matches that you haven't seen 100 times on the indies. You might see somebody who you normally cheer for do things that make you not want to cheer for them. So that's definitely something to keep your eye on there Saturday night. And then GCW in Brunswick, Georgia, is
So
doing.
I want to be clear here because I was a little confused. It's
Yeah,
Georgia Championship Wrestling. It says Golden Isles Wrestling. I'm sure it's a partnership of some kind, that they're running Brunswick. I just wanted to be clear because in my notes I was like, is this Georgia Championship Wrestling? Is this Golden Isle? But I was like, full credit to any time you see the names involved. I'm like, okay, Georgia Championship Wrestling, GCW clearly has a hand in, involved in running this thing.
this is for a good cause. It's a JROTC fundraiser. So if you're in the Brunswick area, and you don't really hear a lot about a lot of wrestling down in the Brunswick area. So hey, if you're a wrestling fan down there, this is a good one to go out. You already have finished, or maybe you're continuing your 4th of July celebrations. But that'll be a good one to go out to. It's for a good cause. And you never know who you're going to see there. The Michael the Flying Fro Walker, the Nelms, Sean Nelson, to name a few. But go check them out there Saturday night, July 6th, there in Brunswick, Georgia. So I had some questions as we're moving along, and we were working on our show notes, and we've mentioned this, and we've seen. We just mentioned it with Deep South. They've kind of switched venues, and now Action Wrestling's running Das Barbecue. We're seeing more and more venues be the home to multiple promotions. And I guess I just want to kind of talk about the pros and cons of that. Just for example, Tannery Row. They're in Buford. You've got Disruptors running there. You got Turnbuckle running there. You've got the PCW arena in Conyers, Platinum Championship Wrestling. You've got now Southern States Pro Wrestling. They just held the Change for Wrestling show, which I think is going to be a regular. I don't know that it's going to be monthly, but they'll run shows there. You got the Royston Dome with Squared Circle Action, Georgia Outlaw, Anarchy. Then you got Scrappy Championship Wrestling, which they've not announced their next show, so we're not really sure what's going on with them. And then Augusta, just within a couple of miles of each other, Phoenix, Viral, IWE, and just to throw them in there because they run Augusta is Bad Boys. Bad Boys of Wrestling. They don't, they run sporadically. But what are there pros and cons to multiple promotions being in the same building like this?
This is because like many topics in wrestling, I think it depends on your attitude and, the stance you want to make. Do you want to be positive? Do you want to be negative? Right? I think we say that about a lot. It's not even wrestling. That's probably everything.
Right.
So let's start at the top. Like we just our list. The Tannery Row thing. I'm like, look, it's two different styles of shows.
Yes.
Are they even going to draw the same crowd? Probably not.
Right.
It's very event based. The venue is, so it's a little bit different. I think. And I think every case is going to be, every situation is going to be case by case basis.
Yes.
How you would argue, look, the pluses. I'll give you this: Disruptor and Turnbuckle. You're not going to see the same wrestlers on those two shows typically.
That's right.
There is some overlap. So I want to be clear. There's a very, very little overlap that you're probably going to see, but it's not going to be like the same people across the board.
Right. I would say these other ones, Platinum or the PCW Arena and Royston Dome, there is going to be a great deal of overlap. To me, you're really talking about two different things. Are you talking about a business like Tannery Row, Ale House, hosting multiple promotions, or just a building? To me, a single building hosting multiple promotions, I don't think that's sustainable. This is just me. Send your hate mail to me. I think it can be confusing. If you've got shows running there all the time, how do I know, how do I keep up with it? How do I know who's going to be where? How do I know the dates? How do I know? And especially if it's some of the same wrestlers.
What if, looks just randomly throwing it out here, right? So let's say, and he's not, I don't think he is, but I tell you who will. Well, he's not. I was trying to give an example, like Jacob Ashworth's the worst example because Jacob Ashworth's a babyface, period.
Yeah.
But if I was trying to say like somebody like Hunter James is working and, he doesn't a ton, but let's say he was working an SCA show.
Yeah.
And then he's working an Anarchy show, et cetera. Or you got a guy like, Scott Mason who's going to work SCA. He might work Anarchy. He might work Outlaw for all I know.
Right.
Okay, well, if he's a babyface in one place, he's a heel in the other storyline. How do you keep those things? Like if he's wrestling this guy at this, promotion, but he's wrestling this guy at this. That's, I think, where you're talking about. And look, and I get it. Everybody's like, oh, y'all are just an idiot. You can't keep up. It can be it could literally be very, convoluted if one guy's in 3 feuds at 3 promotions in the same building, trying to keep up with it eventually, it can become. And I get that. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody there helping kind of quality control that, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
But it ain't like it's not possible.
Here's the thing. The movie theater shows different movies. I don't want to see all the movies. If I go, I'm going to see one movie at a time. I can't watch but one movie at a time. And I've also got to decide financially when kind of go, I'm not going to the movies every day. I'm not going to the movies every weekend.
Yeah.
And so, but to me, from a business standpoint, if you're Tannery Row and you can draw different crowds and you're set up for that, and it's good for your business, which is selling food, selling drinks, then that's a plus. We've already, we've already heard, if you are a wrestling promotion, you have to be a good partner with your venue, whether it's a brewing company, restaurant. If you scare away their regular customers, you're not going to be there long. And so as a wrestling promotion, you got to adapt to be a good partner so that it's worth that that restaurant to keep bringing you in and making you part of their schedule.
Right. And I think they look at it different from a business standpoint because look, if it wasn't a wrestling show, it's MMA or it's a band, like, a cover band, or it's they call it midget wrestling, so can I say that? That's what it's called?
Yes.
Okay. But so it's like, it's going to be an event of some kind.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way they look at it. And that's one thing. They're not built on the ticket sale business.
Right.
It's on the food. They could, if they drew, here's the crazy thing. I said this to somebody the other day. I said, Disruptor has a higher ticket price and another, they, or whatever. So I wonder, like, are they drawing a higher ticket crowd? So they're selling a higher dollar food, so they're happy. Even if the crowd's not, they don't have to have 500, right? Because the crowd's spending money. Same thing. I think Turnbuckle's going to be, their tickets are lower, so are those people going to have more money to spend on food? Mm-hmm. I don't know. So we'll find out. That's going to be the cool thing I want to see from a business standpoint. But when you're ticket driven and then I think, concession driven is a different creature. I think you need more bodies in there, churning and burning through the food as well to help cover that. So I can see it. Now, the flip side of that argument is the positive side. I think you can look at it from is it does help spread the cost across, the monthly rents when you're talking about these other buildings. Like,
yes.
It does help spread the cost of monthly rents across multiple promotions. So maybe it makes it more attainable to be profitable. Maybe that's the aspect that they're looking at.
Right. The good thing for us as a show is these things are relatively new, so we can put a pin in it, and in 6 months to a year, we'll have an answer of whether this is sustainable or not. And then you have, in a couple of weekends, you've got Phoenix Wrestling Experience running shows throughout the day, like it's part of a festival, running shows, and then IWE's that night. And IWE was supposed to be in South Carolina at the Beckplex, and if you follow the story on that, Beckplex got hit by lightning. A lot of their air conditioning units very old, so it's a pretty major repair for them. So IWE had to move back to the American Legion in Augusta. So if you're a wrestling fan, you literally go to wrestling all day, July 13th in Augusta, and see some really good wrestling. So again, time will tell, and we'll see, basically who the last person standing is.
And by the way, we're the first ones to throw out there that we're like, look, and we'll find out. We're not saying we're right, we're wrong, or whatever. We just we got to find out. Time, like you said, time will tell, and it'll all play out. And then our job is just sit here and report out what happened. Like, hey, it was sustainable. And I'll be the first one to tell you, like, hey, either I did or I didn't think it was, and be like, hey, I didn't think it was. It did. I was wrong. Hey, that's awesome. But if it's not, we'll be like, okay, it clearly didn't work. So what does that mean going forward?
Yeah, I certainly don't think you or I are hoping that somebody fails or anything. We're hoping everybody succeeds. We're hoping they all draw huge crowds, make lots of money, and do all these things. I think we're just asking the questions. And I think that's, again, we're in a new era here of Georgia wrestling. Lots of things have changed, and I think this is part of that new era, and just seeing
Okay.
2024, time will tell whether some of this stuff works. Another thing I wanted to talk about, talking about stuff working or not. You mentioned just in the last 2 weeks, you watched an action wrestling live stream on IWTV. And then this past weekend, you watched a live stream on YouTube for Southern States Pro. My question that I want to throw out there, and I have some thoughts on this, because I've heard some promoters say they don't even want their results posted because well, if you post the results, people don't have a reason to buy a ticket. Obviously, you can put that same philosophy toward live streaming, but as a fan, what thoughts on promotions live streaming their events?
Look, for the obvious selfish reasons, I enjoy it. Because here's the thing, I don't know. There's never been a time that either streaming on IWTV or it streaming on YouTube changed my mind on whether I was going to go to the show or not.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me access to a show that I had already either decided I couldn't make or I wasn't going to make for whatever reason. The action show, remember, I was like, hey, look, I got done with work too late. I was never going to make it across Atlanta. I wasn't going to fight that traffic. But, hey, I wanted to, because, by the way, both aspects here, by the way, shows I wasn't going to. So they weren't getting a ticket from me just because I
Right.
wasn't going.
Right.
However, good, bad, or indifferent, I go out of my way. And I would encourage you to do this, by the way. Even if you're not going to sit there and watch, if you have the ability to turn on your live stream of your favorite wrestling promotion on IWTV when it's live, put it on and go off and do what you got to do. Come back and watch it later.
Right.
Give them the credit for a view on IWTV.
Right.
Go on YouTube, put the thing on the live stream. By the way, I'm not sure, this is way too in depth in the number stuff. Live streaming pays better on ad rates than it does on content. Okay, Nick, why don't y'all live stream? Not having that conversation. But if your favorite wrestling promotion is doing a live stream on YouTube,
Right.
even if you're not going to watch it, turn it on and let it play.
Yes.
Help them with ad revenue. You are helping them in the long run. Do that with Coastal Empire, with Southern States, with the IWTVs, with the actions, and on and on and on. Let that thing play while you're working in the background. Give them and help them with any ad revenue you can in any form, fashion that you can. So, but jumped out of that to say it never has changed my mind not to go. It just gave me the ability to see something that I was just going to miss.
Right. Right. I would never. I've watched live streams before, paid for live streams before. I think about the Ashe Wrestling, their first show earlier this year in Charlotte. Wanted to see that, but wasn't able to go. I think if there's a show close enough that I can drive to it, I'm going to do that. But as you mentioned, when you're not able to go, and for me, a lot of these shows are just a 3-hour drive for me to get to some of these places. I think I think I have a unique perspective on live streaming because back in 2010, 2011, I was co-host of a live stream podcast on YouTube. And that we parlayed that experience of live streaming to live streaming events. We've a live stream conferences. And I'll never forget the conversation we had, I want to say in 2016, about live streaming a conference. And they said, well, we're afraid will hurt attendance. And I said, listen, if your event is good, it will help attendance to live stream it because people will see what's happening and they will say, I want to be there. I want to be in the room for that. And we have seen it consistently when you put on a good live stream and the event is good. I mean, the quality of the stream, the quality of the event, and that particular event has grown from 500 to 2,500. And I'm not saying that's all our live stream. I'm saying we were able to help build a movement and build some momentum. The flip side of that is if the quality of your stream and the quality of your show is
Right.
not good, then it's going to, if somebody watches your live stream, they're like, man, this isn't, if you can't stream it well, don't stream at all. If your audio's not good, if your commentary is not good, I still say, I will say this till I'm blue in the face. If you are, I don't understand why you would post a show, either live or not, that does not have commentary in the year 2024. Like that, just to me, if you, and maybe people are out there sitting watching these shows. I personally, if I'm not going to watch a show that doesn't have commentary, I'm just not, because I want to hear the story. I want to know what's going on. So I think that's the flip side is your show may not be as good as you think it is.
Well, look, because to piggyback what you just said, whether that's a stream option or whether it's even going to a show live and in person, you have an opportunity to, make an impression, good or bad.
Right.
So if you don't deliver, like, it's not like, hey, we can just stream this thing and it's going to be okay. No, if it's not good, then that's not only going to not cause people not to watch again, but not want to go to your show. If you put on a really good show, high quality across the board, then what you said happens. I think people go like, I want to be a part of that.
Yes.
And then they go to it. So you got to deliver. It's not just putting it out there as a good or a bad thing. You got to deliver on putting it out there as well.
And here's what I would encourage any promotion thinking about recording or live streaming. And I have recorded a lot of shows. I haven't live streamed wrestling shows. There's got to be a conversation or whatever. I don't think you should set up your building and then figure out where you're going to put your camera. I think you figure out, okay, where do I have power for my camera? Where do I have the internet? You figure out all that, and then you set your building up. Because I think some people just throw up a camera, and I'm like, do you realize that, what people are seeing in the camera is like, we're seeing like an old broken down car, and we're seeing this is not a good shot.
Right.
And I think you also have to think about, I am very, very, very thankful. One of the early shows that I was filming, one of the wrestlers had gone to school for film production. And he said, okay, think about a football game. They've got the hard cam on a football game, and you've got different angles, but you're never going to see a shot coming back across the field from the hard cam. Same with WWE. So when you're filming a wrestling show, every camera needs to be pointing kind of in the same direction.
Yep.
And figuring out, hey, I don't need a big shot of the back of the cameraman. And those are things you have to think about. Those are just little things one of my pet peeves is the ringside cameraman standing right in the middle of the hard cam. Go to the corner, go somewhere. But somebody at home's watching your back, and that's not what they're paying for. They're paying to see the guy in a headlock or the guy. Anyway, I could, if you can't tell, I could rant about this all day. But it is encouraging to see more promotions trying this. I think it's a good thing if you can do it well, if you can do it with quality. And I think it's okay to, like, if you get to your show and you're like, you know what, we're just going to record maybe this show, maybe we're not going to stream this one. It's a lot of self-awareness. So that's just me. That's just my opinion on all that stuff.
Oh, 100%. If you don't deliver, that's the tough part.
Right. Now, I've watched, Ashe's a good example. Watched that first stream. I went to their second show. Drove to Charlotte. Made a 2-hour drive to go do that. So yes, live streams can totally be used to sell tickets. Fans, we want to remind you that in 2 weeks, we're going to be releasing our mid-year report and review. I think we're still working on the format of that show, but I'm excited. You mentioned earlier that Coastal's come out of nowhere. I'm excited to kind of take some time this week and next week and look back over our show notes, look back over the year and see what the surprises are. Who are, I would say, what's the biggest story of the year so far?
Yeah, I think kind of to throw out there what you're talking about, the format, like I don't think we're going to get into, and we may change our minds, by the way, because that's something a lot of people should be open to, is changing their minds. Just saying.
Yes.
But like, just saying. But I don't know that we're going to get into who's the best wrestler in Georgia, like who's the
Right.
best. I think it's more story oriented. Like, what are the big stories, like you said, and promotions that have come out of nowhere, like that type of thing. I think maybe what we gear it more towards too. Because here's my thing: if I told you the wrestler of the year, it's just going to be my opinion. It's going to be your
Right.
opinion, whatever that's worth. Look, if people want to hear that, tappedoutpod@gmail.com, I guess.
Right.
I just don't know that that's what people want to hear. I think just, us having more conversations about it's almost like, is it kind of quote unquote a state of the union midway through the year type of scenario? Maybe that's the show more than anything. But yeah, anyway, so I just think that's maybe where we go versus like, we're not, who's the best tag team? I'm like, okay, whatever. I get it. I just don't know if that's us. I don't know if that's us. I don't know if that's our thing.
Yeah, I definitely want to look at what's the best overall show that we've been to. What's the best match we saw? Who is someone that has surprised us? Who is someone we see has a lot of potential? Who is someone that coming into the year we thought they would do one thing and they haven't really lived up to that? I think one thing I've learned when you do the shows where you're kind of talking about awards and stuff, we were so far off because like at the end of the day, there are different people voting than you and I, and they've got different opinions. And so I think if you're looking for that kind of show, there'll be those kind of shows other places. I think we kind of want to make that. I think we've got the opportunity to create something new, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, totally different direction. Hope, and hey, look, like I said, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. What do you want to hear? What do you want to talk? Like I said, I don't think it'll be an awards type thing, obviously. But what's kind of the stuff you want to know? Hey, ask questions. Send those in to tappedoutpod@gmail.com. We'll answer those questions. Maybe that's even a venue. So like we have our they're the biggest, best news stories, things that we're surprised by, etc. Answer your questions. Again, that's going to be in 2 weeks. So get those sent in the next week or so. That'd be, if you can, tappedoutpod@gmail.com, social media @tappedoutpod.
And I definitely want to use that show to make some predictions.
Sure.
And I would love to hear some of the fans' predictions or even some of the wrestlers' predictions of what they think is going to happen the rest of the year. But it's, we're here mid-year. It's a good time to kind of hit the pause button, just kind of see where things are at in Georgia and in the surrounding areas. So I'm super excited. But fans, if you want to stay on top of that and get it as soon as it's released, again, you got to become a member at patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You can also become a member on YouTube, Tapped Out Pod on YouTube, wherever you search. Tapped Out Pod is where you can find us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, that notification button. All of those things help the good old algorithm and help our show. And our show's nothing, fans, without you watching it, sharing it, supporting it. We appreciate everybody who's shared our clips, promotions who have shared our clips. We're really, really grateful for that because I think you and I both agree. We're just here to promote independent wrestling and get the word out.
That's the goal, man. And look, I know I was sitting here eating, the crow for the last week, working on this surprise we've been working on. I promise you, the show's coming. It's gonna be worth the wait. I promise you, when the person that I'm doing this show is revealed, I think a lot of people are going to be really surprised by it, especially those that know this particular area, but the actual national indie scene as well. So it's going to be super entertaining. We've been developing back and forth, like what we look. Why is it going to be so fun? because you don't know what's going to happen. Because
Right.
we're going to be new at this. The host of the show and me are going to be it's our first times working together. And I promise you, it'll probably be like, it's either going to be awesome or it's going to be such a train wreck that you're going to want to see it. And so you got to be a member. You're going to catch it early. That's where it's going to be first and foremost. So.
Yeah, I'm excited just talking with you about it this week. This is going to be a really one-of-a-kind thing on independent wrestling right now. So, fans, hey, thank you for listening to this week's Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. Thank you for your support. And as always, for Nick McDaniel, I'm Heath Mullican, and we'll see you at the matches.